Hey there guys, theBolderBoulder here, and today I'm going to be doing another Hero Factory mock review. And today I am going to be reviewing Darkon, a villain, and he's a head of the villain researchers, and he's the head of the project. Alright, so here's Darkon. So I'll start off by giving you guys this 360 view so you can see him from all angles. So, yep, this is Darkon, the head of the project. And the project is a top secret project, basically. Nobody else outside of the castle really knows what goes on inside this laboratory. In fact, only the villain leaders really know everything that happens in there. And most of the villain guards inside the castle guards, actually know what happens in there too. Searchers and city guards don't know quite as much about what happens. So it's pretty mysterious, and some of the things they do is pretty much the equivalent of working on living creatures or living beings in the real world. So they're experimenting on living things, on biomechanical beings that they create. And it's just madness, really. It's terrible what they do. I mean, there's no telling what other things they've done. But in this story we will get a glimpse of what really happens inside their laboratories. And it's just one case in particular that you'll get to see in this story. But I don't want to reveal too much, so now I'm going to continue about this guy. You guys know I normally do the annotations on the right side, but for some reason YouTube seems to have taken away that pause annotation, so I can no longer do that. So now I'm gonna just have to put the bio and everything down in the description. It'll be at the top, so you guys can click the little more button right below it and it'll show all the information. So that's just a heads up from now on. So now let's talk a little bit more about Darkon himself and some of his past, because you really don't get into his backstory in the story because, well, it's not really needed, but a lot of the things will make sense when you hear about this. So, before the fall of the Hero Factory, he was actually created, because he, in fact, himself is biomechanical, which will explain the breathing apparatus he currently has on, but I'll get to that in a moment. It was actually something Professor Zib was working on. He was trying to design a robot that could have basically life. What heroes have, they're pretty much brought to life with the hero cores using quasar. But since that element, or stone, rather, probably, is quite rare, he wanted to see if it was possible to create a living robot. Sounds kind of odd, but it's something like Bionicle, if you know what I mean. And so that's what he was trying to do. He's not really an experiment compared to what these guys are actually doing to other robots. He was just trying to create a being that would be loyal and be able to help out the Hero Factory. And if they trained him up enough and he matured enough, he'd be able to fight alongside the heroes if it all worked out. But during the attack on the Hero Factory, Zib was actually working on him in his laboratory, and he was actually asleep because he was working on him to be able to help him breathe, actually. And because something had happened and he just had to put him to sleep so he would breathe less, and so it was easier for him to. So he was working on many different things. I'm not really quite sure of all the details, really. But somehow, when the villains broke into the factory and destroyed everything, and captured Professor Zib and captured all of the employees from Hero Factory and Mr. Makuro himself, they found Darkon in the laboratory. He didn't have a name at the time because Professor Zib was waiting for him to be able to be conscious to give him a name so he would know. So Darkon was given to him by the villain leaders. But there were some villains who broke into the laboratory and found him. And somehow he'd woken up because an anesthetic that was that put him to sleep was wearing off quickly. And since Professor Zib wasn't there to take care of him, he had trouble breathing, and there were some machines hooked up to him to check his vitals and such, and they noticed that he wasn't able to breathe and that he could probably die very soon. So one of the generals who came into the Hero Factory to help destroy it, and who were leading one of the many groups that were going around completely obliterating the place, found him and located a breathing apparatus, which is what he's currently wearing, and a tank that gives him breath, and put it on him, and he's alive. So he believes he's indebted to the villains, and which is why he works for them. So I suppose it's sort of a good thing the villains did, yet they're using it for evil. And now he himself is working on biomechanical beings and all kinds of horrible things. So that's a glimpse at his backstory. And he's highly respected now among the villains. And you'll just have to wait and see what all happens to the story. One more thing I'd like to show you now are his gadgets. Now that I've gone on through the story, you see right here on his mask, he's got this little piece, and that is actually a light that he can use when he's performing experiments or surgeries to work on his experiments. He can shine that and use one of his many tools and work on it. Or he also has another little piece that can be removed, and this little piece is actually laser that connects right here, and it's also removable. That way he can use that for precision when performing tasks as well, using one of his many tools. So that's that. And now let's look at all of the tools he has on this arm. Right here, he has a clamp that can spin 360 degrees, and he can grab objects without having to be harmed by them if they're extremely hot, or if he just doesn't want to touch something, he can just grab it with that and move it around. Right here, here's a blade that he can use to cut small incisions and do many different things. Right here is a big needle that he can use to inject pretty much anything he wants, which is what this tube is for, that goes all the way to his back and connects right here. And this is a little cartridge of whatever liquid or substance he wants to inject into the subject. And so that's what that is. And then lastly, here is a blade that he can use for melee, or if something happens and the creature or whatever he's working on doesn't listen and won't listen to anything he says and completely disobedient, he takes care of it. So it's for self-defense and for killing or anything like that. And so right here we've got little spikes on his arms. Whenever he was first created, though, he did have a hero core on originally, but that's what Professor Zib was trying to see if he could make it so that he wouldn't need a hero core. But that was soon removed by the villains, and they placed on this villain core. So he doesn't resemble the heroes at all, because they consider it a disgrace to even have that H symbol anywhere in there. And then on here you can see these little horns. Those are naturally grown horns, like on an animal, because he's biomechanical. And that's the same thing with these as well. They're little spikes that grew on his body when he matured. So that is Darkon. That's pretty much it. So thank you guys very much for watching and subscribing and hitting that like button. And please be sure to check out my Facebook and Blogspot pages. And please be sure to check out my story, because part 4 of the plan is now up on my blog. So I'll see you guys again in my next video. Have a great day. Bye.